Hello and welcome to the EyeMustTravel YouTube channel. I create driving and walking videos, and if that's something you like, please click the subscribe button and like this video, and you will be notified each time I upload a video. This video is a little bit different for me because I've never had voiceover on my videos, but today I want to go through with you the process I went through to sell my 2022 Chevy Bolt back to GM. As you may know, the Chevy Bolt has had serious battery issues, and I was able to get what's called a repurchase. What you're seeing on the screen right now is the last drive I took in my Chevy Bolt before I returned it to the dealer. I live in Southern California, and specifically in the Palm Springs area in the Coachella Valley, and you're seeing beautiful pictures of the Coachella Valley right now. This is a 20-minute drive, and I've already posted a video without any voiceover. So if that's what you're interested in, I'll leave a link below to that. Today, what I'm going to go over in this video is the entire repurchase process for my 2022 Chevy Bolt. I leased my Bolt at the end of June 2021. I went to the dealership because my husband and I were looking for a second car, and originally I went to look at the Chevy Spark, but it was the middle of the pandemic and all of the small cars are bought or leased as soon as they hit the lot. I had done a little bit of research on electric vehicles because electric vehicles seemed like a great second car. And of course, living in Southern California, I see Teslas and other EVs everywhere. I knew that there were some issues with the batteries in the 2017 to 2019 Chevy Bolts, but my understanding was that this wasn't an issue for the 2021 or 2022 Bolts. So we went to the dealership, and there was this beautiful 2022 Chevy Bolt parked right in front of in the prime spot. It was bright white. It had all the mod cons. It had a great sound system, heated seats, the works. I took a test drive, and I loved it. I just loved it. I love the way it drove. I'm very tall, and my husband's very tall, and the legroom is amazing, so I leased it on the spot. I put quite a bit down. I put $10,000 down because I wanted a low monthly rate. I wouldn't do that again, by the way, but I signed the paperwork and off I went. And for the first few weeks, I had a great time. I drove it locally, and I also took it on a few longer trips. It handled well for me both on the highway and on neighborhood streets. Then in mid-July, just a few weeks after I leased the car, the stories started to pop up about the Chevy Bolt fires. The stories were limited to the 2019 and earlier Bolts, but then in late July, a formal recall of the 2017 to 2019 Chevy Bolts was announced. At the end of August, I got an email from Chevy stating the recall had been extended to the 2021 and 2022 model year Chevy Bolts. The email gave instructions on what to do, and it said, don't park your car in the garage anymore, and don't charge your car above 90%, and don't go below 70 miles of charge. Now, the whole reason I got this car is that I go to Los Angeles all the time, and I wanted a car that would do that journey on a single charge. My trip one way is about 130 miles on average. The Bolt's range, when I first got it, was somewhere between 250 and 270 miles when I charged it fully. I'll put an image on the screen here of the instrument panel, and you'll see a green range on the left, which gives the average miles and a top and bottom number of miles for the current state of charge. Now, my journey is about 135 miles, let's say, but every time I took that journey, I would lose about 25 miles of range during the trip. I don't know why this happens, and I don't know if it's common among EVs or not. But given that I would lose 25 miles of range, I really needed 200 plus miles of range because I wanted to have a 60 to 80 mile of range cushion when I got to my destination. Because fast chargers can be hard to come by in LA, and I didn't want to have to rush to find one as soon as I got there. When the email said I had to park it outside, I was really upset because I live in the desert. It can get upwards of 120 degrees Fahrenheit here in the summer. So it's completely unrealistic for me to park the car outside all the time. I have an attached garage that's insulated, and one of the reasons I decided to get an electric vehicle is because it was easy for me to charge my car overnight in my garage, which GM was now saying I was not allowed to do. So I was really mad because I loved the car during the brief time I had had it. I still love the car, the way it looks, the way it drives, and I was mad that GM didn't provide a solution or even a timeline for a solution. I had thought about a repurchase when I saw that the recall was extended to my model year, and now I thought about it seriously. I remembered that back in the day during the 1990s, GM had bought back every single one of its electric cars, the EV1 it was called. They bought back every single one. So I thought maybe they would buy back mine too. I also looked online and some people had already had their earlier model year Chevy Bolts repurchased by GM. So I was thinking about it, but I didn't do anything about it right away. Then, in mid-October, I was contacted by phone by a GM representative. I think he referred to himself as a customer service coordinator or GM concierge or something like that. He asked me some questions about the car, and then he asked if I wanted to trade it in for a different vehicle. Not just a different Chevrolet vehicle, but any GM vehicle. He said something like, hey, do you want to return the Bolt to us and we can get you into another GM vehicle? I was pretty clear that I didn't want to go back to an ICE car or an internal combustion engine car. Okay, so right here in the video, I'm going to be panning to my dashboard, my very, very dusty dashboard. I did actually dust the inside of the car before I returned it, but of course, I didn't do this before I filmed my last drive. That's the navigation system right there. It runs through Apple CarPlay, and then that's the dashboard. You can see that little gauge on the left. The green area indicates how much charge is left, and it gives the range. Anyway, so I didn't trust this person who had called me because I felt the company wasn't forthright about the fact that the battery issues were present in the car they had leased to me just a couple of months before. So honestly, I gave them a piece of my mind about this, and I said I want a repurchase. And that's the key. You have to ask for the repurchase. They will probably not offer it to you. You have to ask for it. Now, I live in California, and California has a pretty good lemon law. I'll put up a list of the states with good lemon laws. California doesn't have the best lemon law, but it's pretty good, and I think it's the reason GM reached out to me at all, because essentially they had to. If you live in a state with a good lemon law, you probably can get GM to repurchase your Bolt. I leased, but it's considered a repurchase because GM takes possession of the car and pays off the balance owed to the leasing company, which in my case was GM Financial. If you live in a state that doesn't have a good lemon law and you ask for a repurchase, your request may be declined. I've read online that a number of people have requested a repurchase and they were actually turned down. So the GM customer service rep tried a couple more times to convince me to trade my 2022 Chevy Bolt for another GM car. I believe they call this a trade repurchase. And I was like, nope, you guys did a bait and switch on me. This is not the car I thought I was leasing. So I was talking to the rep and I said, no, I really want to repurchase. And he said, okay, I'll see what I can do. And then about 2 weeks later, and this would have been the end of October 2021, he contacted me and he said, you've been approved for repurchase. And then I got a formal email and I think also a letter that said my car was approved for repurchase. And so I thought, well, great, this will be wrapped up in 4 or 5 weeks. As it turned out, it took about 5 months in between the time they first contacted me and the time I returned the car. Basically, every week the case coordinator was supposed to call or email me to give me an update. On average, he called or emailed every 10 days or so, but then it got weird towards the end of the year. Here's the thing. They try to call you once, and if you don't pick up, they leave a very generic message, and then they follow up with a very generic email saying something like, your case is still being worked on. A call comes in from an 800 number, and I don't normally pick those up, so I miss this guy's call all the time, and he was absolutely impossible to get live on the phone when I called back. Even when I called back just a minute or two later, it was incredibly frustrating. What I learned later, and this is also really important, is that if you respond to the email, it becomes part of your record, or your case as they call it. But when you call and leave a voicemail, it doesn't become part of your record. I only found this out when I was so frustrated that I called the general concierge number and asked for a supervisor or that my case be switched to a different representative. That didn't happen, and I was told at that time to reply to all emails So I began to email him every time I called saying, I just left you a voicemail, please contact me with an update. When he first contacted me, he requested a picture of my license, the car's registration, a picture of the odometer, and pictures of the inside and outside of the car, presumably to check the car's condition. I received confirmation that he had received that information, but after that, I went through about 5 to 6 weeks with very inconsistent communication from this person. Finally, at the end of November, I got the rep live on the phone, and he said the case had been assigned to a dealer. This was very good news because it meant that repurchase had, in fact, been approved and things were moving forward. However, it was still another almost 2 months before I was contacted by the Repurchase Coordinator, who is the actual person who communicates with the dealer, the finance company, and who writes the offer for repurchase. So the end of the year holidays were approaching, and I still didn't have an offer in hand. My customer service rep had said it would take 8 to 10 weeks after initial contact before I would get an offer. The 10-week mark fell during the 3rd week of December, so I was frustrated but not totally surprised when I didn't get an offer by the end of the year. It was a frustrating time because every week I was like, am I going to have the car? Am I not going to have the car? Should I drive the car? Should I not drive the car? I decided to go ahead and schedule the software update that had been released by Chevrolet in November for the Bolt. This software patch would manually limit the maximum battery charge to 80%, enabling me to park the car inside my garage, charge it as I would regularly, and also to drive the car below 70 miles of range. I had delayed getting the software update because I thought I was just going to return the car, but by mid-December I called the original dealer and scheduled it for the 2nd week of January. Firstly, when I went to the dealer to get the software update, no one at the dealership could answer any of my questions about it. Some public fast charging stations limit or slow down charging when the battery gets to 80% of charge. I wanted to know if the software update would mean a public fast charger would read the battery as full when it was only at 80%. It turns out it doesn't, but more importantly, the car started acting very strangely after I got the software update. Historically, if I was driving locally, I wouldn't lose any range, but if I drove on the highway to LA, for example, I would lose about 25 miles of range, as I said earlier. After the software update, I would lose up to 50 miles of range. Also, when I charged the car completely, I would get very inconsistent amounts of range, from a high of 207 to a low of 182. Now, if I only get 182 miles of range, I am not going to make it to the LA or from LA on a single charge. In fact, the last time I drove the Bolt back from LA, I had to pull off the road about 30 miles from home and top up the battery because I was down to 20 miles of range. I had lost 50 miles of range on a 135-mile journey. That should never happen. And it really reinforced my desire to move forward with the repurchase. So I was feeling like the car was very inconsistent in terms of its performance. That was frustrating, and it was also a bit scary, to be honest. I also wondered if GM was taking so long to give me an offer because they wanted me to get the software update, thinking I might just decide I didn't want to move forward with the repurchase. Finally, a repurchase coordinator contacted me in late January and said, I'm your person, I'm your contact for the rest of the process. You have been assigned to a dealer and I need a couple of weeks to work things out. She then asked for all the stuff I had given the first guy in October, license, registration, odometer, photos of the car, all that stuff. It turned out she needed over 3 weeks to send me an offer, and I got so irate I threatened to contact the state authorities because they were stringing me along for such a long time. There is no reason the process should have taken as long as it did. It should have taken maybe 4 weeks maximum. Finally, I received an offer the 2nd week of February. The offer included reimbursement for my down payment and all lease payments I had made less usage. They only really charged me about $90 to $100 per month for usage, so effectively I rented a car for 8 months at about $100 a month. That sounds like a pretty good deal, but I still would much rather have had them say, hey, we will replace your potentially damaged battery with a new one. I would have been delighted with that outcome, but because of the pandemic or whatever reason, there was no timeline for battery replacement. There are a couple of other videos out there and a great article in Forbes by a writer who did a Bolt repurchase, so I was familiar with what the offer should look like and what it should include. So I took the offer. I signed it the day I got it, but then it was another 2 weeks before I was contacted by the dealer. It was supposed to be 5 days or something like that, and then they said the paperwork was lost somewhere, and it was just one thing after another. I was supposed to hear from the dealer by February 21st, and that day came and went with no contact from anyone. I had to call the Repurchase Coordinator and the dealer multiple times and get irate again. Finally, on February 28th, 2021, I was contacted by the dealer. The return process, or what they call the surrender process, was actually very easy. I scheduled it for the next day, March 1st, and I took the car out for one last drive to shoot the video that you see here. I showed up at the dealership at the appointed time. I had to bring my license and ask for my contact, who is the sales manager. He performed an inspection of the car, which only took about 10 minutes. I only had the car for 8 months, and it was in great shape, so it was a short process for the inspection. And then he came in, I signed some paperwork, and he gave me a check. That process was very easy, but I have to say the biggest disappointment is that no one at either of the two dealerships I went to, I returned it at a different dealership than I leased it from. Neither of the two dealerships, the people knew very much about electric cars at all. The Bolt is a great car, but GM is not a great company for electric vehicles, in my opinion. The staff seem pretty disinterested in EVs, even though GM is coming out with a number of electric cars and trucks in the very near future. When I returned the car, I was talking to the guy about the fact that I was losing range, and he said they had all driven EVs, but no one had really gone on a long trip like I was describing. So they have no real personal experience with EVs. By the way, here is beautiful El Paseo in Palm Desert. It's a great shopping street, and it was a gorgeous day that day. Anyway, in the end, I'm very grateful to have learned a lot about electric vehicles, how they work, how they drive, how driving changes in an EV versus an ICE car. The whole process of driving an EV is different than in a regular internal combustion engine vehicle. You have to plan your journey in an EV, and you have to know where the charging stations are. As I said, you have to know where the charging stations are. There are a lot of apps out there that can help you with this. Fast charging is really important. In my case, I needed to know where the CCS chargers are. They can charge about 100 miles in an hour. I learned a lot from other EV owners I would meet at various charging stations. Generally, the EV community is very helpful and generous with their knowledge. Will I get another EV? I probably will eventually. The charging situation in a big city like Los Angeles is getting very competitive. It's hard to find a fast charger. I stay in an apartment in LA, and I don't have the ability to charge my EV at my home, so I have to use public charging stations, and it's getting very competitive to find a good and reliable public fast charger. So I think I might go with a gas-electric hybrid, at least for the next few years until the electric charging infrastructure is more robust. So overall, I think the Chevy Bolt is a great car. I still love it. I still love driving it. I love the concept of electric vehicles. I will look into them in the future. So that's my story. I hope you found this video helpful. Please share your experience about your repurchase process and also any Chevy Bolt battery issues down below in the comments section. And if you have any questions you feel I haven't answered, please put them in the comments below, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. Please enjoy the last few minutes of my last drive of my 2022 Chevy Bolt. Thanks again for watching, and once again, please hit that subscribe button to be notified when I post a new video. Have a great day.